Okay, Shin Sad Zayin. Okay, we're in the middle of Techumin. Okay, Din Shvita Siyachid Kelav Umahalech Alpayim Ama. Alright, so we're going to see it doesn't only apply to you, it applies to your objects and possessions. So let's see. Aleph. Kol Adam, every person, Yeshlo Alpayim Ama Lakol Ruach. Everyone has 2,000 Amos. Right? Out of Chutz Mi'arba Amosav, outside of your Dalet Amos. So that means, from where you're standing, everybody gets 2,004 Amos. Okay? Now, we're going to see that inside, but I'll let you know ahead of time. These Amos are not the same Amos that we learned in the previous Siman of Shin Sadi Vav. Shin Sadi Vav, when a person has Dalet Amos for his makom, for carrying or for Techum, it's subjective if you're big or small. So it's not exactly what we call an Amma. It's not exactly the same standard Amma. Here, when we're counting 2,000 Amos, it's the same standard. Everyone has the same. Right? When we talk about the Amos or Tfachim for a Sukkah, it's the same Tfachim Amos for everybody. For your Lulav, it's the same. For 2,000 Amos, it's the same. It's just the Dalet Amos of your place, because your place is subjective to you. That's the only difference. So you get 2,004 Amos. So for the standard Amos, it might be a drop less than 2,004, it might be a drop more. Okay. O mehamakom sheshavaspo, or from the place that you are staying. Right? We learned if you're in a Rishus HaYachid, so it doesn't matter how big that Rishus HaYachid is. It could be a whole city, it could be a yard, whatever it is, as long as it's not a din of a carmelis of a karpef, then you get 2,000 amos beyond the walls. Okay? So from the edge of your city, let's say, if there's you get, from the edge of your city, or from the edge of your chatzer, or the edge of your house, wherever the people stop living. Okay? You don't have to have an eruve chatzeros to have Techumin. It's two separate things completely. It goes by where the houses end, even if there's no fence around you. Okay.
It's not 2,004 Amos in the whole Ruach, because yesterday we said that the 4 Amos don't go in the whole Ruach. When we say you go to one side to the other, it's not 4 in all directions.
So that's correct also.
But when
you can choose.
Amos, you then have 4 Amos.
No, so you're right, but you can choose to be 4 and 1 and 0. You're right. So if you're going to walk both ways, I'm pretty sure you're right. It's 2002. That sounds correct. I don't think it's a machlok. Oh, wait, yeah.
Here.
According to the Ramah, you can get 4 in each direction. According to the Shulchan Aruch, if you want to go in both directions, I believe you analyze it accurately, it would be 2002 if you want to go in both directions. And according to the Ramah, and the Mishnah Berurah is Meiko like the Ramah, you got 2004 in both directions. Very good. Or 2,000 from the edge of the city. Okay, there happens to be an opinion. If it's from the city, you get even 4 more, but let's just say for right now, what's 2,000 from the edge of your city or the edge of your place? Okay. 2,000. This whole din of Techumin we hold is Derabanan, and they made up 2,000, and that's that. But it's important just to point out, there's a whole machlokas in the Gemara, and the Rambam Paskins, 12,000 is Deraisa. The Rambam Paskins that Techumin is also Deraisa, and Chazal came up with the 12,000, and they also came up with the 2,000 Derabanan. Okay, let's go on. Bet. Kadash Alava Yomabika, if a person is he's camping, he's in a forest, or he's just traveling in the valley somewhere. Ve'eni yodei Techum Shabbos. He lost track. He doesn't know where Shabbos, the end of Techum Shabbos is. Right? Shabbos starts, and you're outside, and you have no idea, there's no demarcations where your 2,000 amos is. So what do? You're allowed to walk, but mehalech alpayim sios benonios. You just take 2,000 steps. but you just got to make sure your steps are pretty much in line with the normal steps, which will give you, each normal step is an objective standard amma. Obviously, if you're bigger or smaller, you just gotta be a little machmer this way or that way, or a bit, or just, practice.
How tall were people during the time of the Gemara?
I don't know. That's Shehem Techum Shabbos. Taking 2,000 steps, that's a Techum Shabbos. Right? We see also a couple stories in the Gemara where people, they just count by walking. And so I've done that before, but it's very easy to lose track when you're counting 2,000. So be very careful, or use your fingers for every 10 or 100 or 50, whatever. Come up with a good system so you don't lose track. Okay, Gimel. Kashem she'ein adam rashai lahalech b'Shabbos u'v'Yom Tov el alpayim amal l'chol ruach. Now, eruvei chatzeros you don't need for Yom Tov, but you do need eruvei techumin. Techumin is equal for Shabbos and Yom Tov. Can't walk outside the 2,000 amos. So therefore, kach kelav uvehemto. Now, by the way, you're just going to see that many of the examples, the Shulchan Aruch throws in the word Yom Tov. It's incidental. It could have been Shabbos. There's no difference. Happens to be a lot of these halachos come from Maseches Beitza. And that's why it has the example of Yom Tov.
Well, Caleb, you can't move your Caleb on Shabbos, which is Yom Tov is for you.
You can move them. Okay. So Caleb is often referring to, practically it's often referring to Yom Tov if there's no Eruv. Once you have an Eruv, your Techum is going to start beyond the Eruv. So that's another practical reason. It's often like that. Okay, very good. Also, one of the examples, again, we already said the real reasons, but also another one is dealing with fire. We're going to come up with an example of fire. That's only practical on Yom Tov. Unless, whatever, Pikuach Nefesh, but then why should it matter? So, we just read, it applies to Caleb and your behema as well. Anything you own, you can't go outside of your 2,000, outside of your Techum, which is your 2,000 amos. And, you can't ask a non-Jew to take it for you. You can't send out your animal to go beyond. Okay, whenever that comes up. We'll see. Another practical example is, let's say someone wants to pick it up from your house. And he made himself an eruvei techumin. So let's say he's 3,000 amos away from you. And he made he set up an eruvei techumin, at the point close to 2,000 amos. It could be anywhere, but let's say he made it close to 2,000 amos. Has to be anywhere within the 2,000 amos. And so now he can easily walk to you. But you can't walk to him as you didn't set up your eruvei techumin.
He can't even take yours.
So that's exactly what we're saying. The items follow the owner at Bein Hashmashos. So therefore, we're going to see some exceptions, but basically, that's pretty much the rest of the siman. And so he can't take it from your house to his house. He can walk because he made himself an eruvei techumin, but he can't take your items because your items are stuck to you, are attached to you, and since you have your Techum, your possessions have your Techum. Okay, so let's see how that plays out. Ve'im ervu ba'aleim l'ruach achas, en shum adam yachol laholicham l'ruach acheres efilu psia achas u'makom she'ein ha'be'alim yachol yimaholech. So therefore, we're just saying the same thing. He can't take it outside of your Techum, and even if you make a Techum in one direction, and either way, bottom line is, and just to explain, it's very important to understand, when it comes to Techumin, if a person makes an eruvei Techumin before Shabbos, you put it in one direction. Let's say you want to walk in one direction. It's from your home or your city, wherever you are. So now, instead of getting stuck to your 2,000 amos, you make as if your place is where you set up your eruvei Techumin. So that's your middle place. And from that middle, so you can walk there. And then you get another 2,000 amos from there. But you no longer have your 2,000 amos in the other direction from where you actually are standing when Shabbos starts. Because no matter what, when it comes to Techumin, it's always 2,000 amos in each direction. from where your place is, either physically or where you set up your Techumin. If you set up your Techumin, that's Koveya, that's what it establishes, and then that's your middle spot, and then you get 2,000 amos in each direction from there. You can't pick. It's either, you only get 4,000 amos in total, right? Or 2,000 amos on each side of the city. It's a circle. It's a circle.
A diagonal that extends beyond 2,000.
Right, it's a circle, you get the corners. Okay. Hagav, now, you get the corners. It's a circle. V'ayin el sof siman, I see what you mean.
It's a circle inside the square, not outside the square.
You gain the corners. You gain the corners. So it's a little more. In the corners, you know what? We'll explain exactly when we get there. Okay, we'll get there. So he says, Lamaisa Mishnabura, you are allowed to give it to an animal that might take it outside the Techum. You can't tell him to go outside the Techum, but if it might, that's not your problem. Okay.
Actually, give it to an animal who might work it. If she's down.
Yeah, so in the case when you're not worried about him working. Alright, we'll have to look up what the case would be, but yeah. Has to be a case where it's not going to work for you. Okay. Good point.
Watching it the whole time.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting case that's going to come up from here is if a person, let's say, needs to go, this comes up quite often in Ramat Beit Shemesh. It doesn't come up so often in many cities, but in Ramat Beit Shemesh it happens very often. A person needs to go to the hospital on Shabbos. Let's say he's driven, ambulance, you take him, whatever it is, person has to go to the hospital on Shabbos. And the hospital, unfortunately, we won't get into the reasons, there is no hospital in all of Beit Shemesh. And it'll be a while till there is one. So Pikuach Nefesh, you go to the hospital, no question. What about your objects? You're going out of your Techum. To go from Beit Shemesh, generally you're going to Yerushalayim, Lav Dafka. Usually you're going to Yerushalayim to the hospital. You can go, you're leaving your Techum, no question. Pikuach Nefesh, you have to. Whoever needs to accompany the person, you go, no questions. Usually one person is allowed, okay, sometimes more, fine. What about you want to bring your toothbrush, your slippers, your nightgown, whatever you want to bring, I don't know. Sheitel, who knows what people bring with them to the hospital. They want to bring it with them. Are you allowed to bring it with you on Shabbos? So, simply put, absolutely asr. Right? According to the Rambam, V'nisa D'Oraisa, we generally hold V'nisa D'Rabbanan. There's no question about it. It's, your objects are asr. So there are two basic potential heterim that people rely on, outside of Shogim Vayu Mazidim. Just be quiet. So number one, sometimes we say, and it's legit, depending on the case, is you say Pikuach Nefesh also on the objects. Because the person, if you start telling them, no, you can't bring this, you can't bring that, they're going to start getting all stressed and anxious or uptight. And when a person is Cholesh Yesh Bo Sakana, that's also a problem. So therefore, that you're allowed to do that. The other heter,
but for the person accompanying him,
he can't bring his own stuff. No. For the one accompanying, you can't bring your tefillin for the next day, or you can't bring anything with it for yourself. You can't bring your wallet. There's no heter for the. Right. Now the other possible heter. Right. So I saw this by Rav Zilberman. He says before Shabbos. Now this doesn't work for someone who's not pregnant, because you don't expect to go to the hospital. Someone who's pregnant knows it's any day. They know they might go to the hospital the Shabbos. So on Friday, what do? You make your bag of all the stuff you want to bring, and you say it's hefker. Anyone can take it. No one's going to take it. You're not worried. And you say it's hefker, it's not mine. And we're going to learn that if it's hefker, it's not kona makom, it's not kona shvita. And you just have to make sure that when you get onto the ambulance or the car, you don't take it and say it's yours. If you're going to pick it up, you say it's still hefker until you arrive to the hospital. Because otherwise, you're kona shvita automatically when you pick it up. So it has to stay hefker until you reach the hospital or the city of Yerushalayim. And even if there's no Erev in Yerushalayim, let's just say that's still the Techum, because the Techum has nothing to do. You don't need a wall to make your Erev Techumin. It just has to do with houses and homes need to be within a certain distance of each other, which usually applies. We'll see. It's you're allowed to. Okay. Let's see. Let's try and finish. Dalet. Hamosar behem talivno, if a person has an animal. So this is a din for shepherds, not really for us usually. So the person has an animal and he gives it over for his son to watch, to take care of during Shabbos. Hareyo kiraglei ha'av. So the Shulchan Aruch paskins, it has the din for Eruvei Techumin, that it belongs to the father. And therefore, the Techum is established based on the father. I'll just point out there is a major machlokas of poskim if it follows the son or the father. Perhaps the father follows the father because he doesn't really give it over to the son so much to be so responsible or not. He's not giving it to him to keep. He's just letting his son help him out, and it's considered like the father is still in charge and still the main shomer for it. So somewhere in this way, somewhere it's a bachloket achronim. Okay? Perhaps there is what to be a mekel, both for Sephardim and Ashkenazim, if there's a real issue, but again, these issues don't usually come up. And by the way, okay, fine. Yeah.
He gave it to him on Erev Shabbos?
We are talking about, so for this halacha, I don't think it matters. I think it matters if it's Erev Shabbos or on Shabbos. Mishnah Berurah says otherwise? I don't think so.
He gave it to him.
Right.
On Shabbos itself.
Yeah, because you're allowed to give it to him on Shabbos, you're allowed to give it to him Erev Shabbos, and it doesn't make a difference. Okay. Hey, Misra Ro'eh, if you give it to another shepherd in the city, and you give it to him to watch during Shabbos or Erev Shabbos, maybe there's a difference. Again, this happens to be a big machlok at a poskim, the halacha. It doesn't matter if you give it to a Jewish ro'eh or a non-Jewish ro'eh. Afilu natano b'yom tov. Even if you give it on Yom Tov, it makes no difference. It has the din that it goes to the ro'eh. And again, this is a machloket rishonim, or achronim certainly, that if it applies, if they agree. Maybe it's only true if there's only one shepherd to give it to in the city, and for sure that was the one you were going to give it to. Okay. And if you give it to two shepherds, if you gave it to two at the same time, so therefore neither one of them really took it, and so therefore it's still considered in your possession for this halacha. Okay, Vav. Shor shel patam. You have an ox that you feed it really, really well, nice and fat and juicy, to make good meat, and it's a special ox. You do more than the average, and therefore people from other cities, from all around, want to come and buy. Now this is omed limacher. You want to sell it. That's the whole purpose. So since you're trying to sell it, you want to sell it, that's your whole das. It's already, we consider it for this halacha, it's like already halfway out of your possession. And then even if a person takes it on Shabbos, whoever takes it on Shabbos, it then the Biselim of Freya at Bein HaShemashos, this Eruvei Techumin follows, this animal follows the buyer for this halacha of Techum.
The buyer or the patam?
The buyer.
You didn't know the one that was going to.
He didn't know. That's correct. So we say borer, lema Freya. We say this about a couple stuff. You do say borer, lema Freya. Exactly. Breira, whatever you want to say. Well, this is darabanan, but it's for this halacha. It's also darabanan. Yeah. Okay. And because you want to sell it, it makes a difference. You'll see. By renting and by borrowing, you don't have so much das. It's still yours. You're not willing to get rid of it. And borrowing, it's a little different. We'll see. V'chein, im shechato be'ala b'yom tov v'mecharo b'saro. You, the owner, shechted it on Shabbos, on Yom Tov. That's why the case is Yom Tov. And then you're going to give out different cuts, different pieces of the meat. Even then, kol echad me'adlochi molich v'naseh l'makom shehu holech. Every buyer gets his piece, and each one can go to his own individual Techum, the buyers.
How do you do over on that? You strip of the animal, I
You can. You're allowed to. Anytime, you don't pay with cash, but you just you know you're going to pay. You say whatever is appropriate, and then you deal with the money later. But yeah, you ought to make 100% kinyanim on things that are usable on Yom Tov. It's a whole question: can you give gifts lachatchila that are usable, not usable? That's a whole separate machlokes achronim. But you see from the Mishnah, you're allowed to give usable food lechatchila on Yom Tov. Zayin. Okay. Shor shel roeh. An ox of a shepherd, kiragle anshe ota ha'ir. Now, this is a regular shor, that's average. So the das is only to sell it to people in your city. People are not traveling from far away just to buy any stam shor. Assuming that's the case, the Metzias. So then, since the assumption was you're going to sell it to someone in the city, therefore it goes by the Techum of your city. If you have a house and different people live in there, but it's miyuchad for one person. One guy is the one who always uses it. No one else really uses it. Hareihem kiraglav. So then it goes by this one person. Right? You have two brothers, and one guy made an erev Techumin for himself in one direction, one didn't, or he made it in the other direction. Who does this item follow? The one who it's miyuchad for him. That's his. She'ena miyuchadim, and if it's not miyuchadim, it's just everyone uses it more or less equally. So then, so therefore you can only go into the direction that both of them can use it. If two people made the Techum to go in their Eruvei Techumin to go in two opposite directions, we call it Chamar Gamal, you're stuck. You can't go in either direction. Because each one stretched it out into this direction, right? We learned that. You can't, once you stretch it in one direction, it's only in one direction. You can't go in both. Right? The expression Chamar Gamal is, it's like, let's say it's an expression in Chazal. You can't go in both, it gets stuck. You can't go in both directions, but it's like you have a Chamar and a Gamal, a camel and a donkey on two different leashes. You're holding them and they're each pulling in opposite directions. So the guy is stuck, they can't move anywhere. Because each one's going two different directions. Okay, that's just the expression. Okay. Tet. Shenayim sheshalu chaluk. Two people borrow something. I think this was Erev Shabbos, right? They borrow it Erev Shabbos. One of them to use it during the morning. Right? But if it would be borrowed during Shabbos, it goes by the owner. Here you're borrowing Erev Shabbos. So it's already distinguished who it's going to. You already gave it in their hand, Erev Shabbos. So then, and there's two guys. One of them wants to use it in the morning in this direction. One wants to use it at night in the other direction. So the same thing. So you could only take it in a direction that both of them can go, because each one is going in two different directions, and they both have ownership for the din of Techum. If each one made it in each direction, east or west, opposite directions, and since they're both shoalim, they're both borrowing it, you're stuck, and you can't move it at all outside of your. Right? If they made it to the two extremes, 2,000 amos, then you can't move at all outside of your dalet amos or outside of your city or your enclosure. Good. Two people, they bought it together b'shutfus, and then they shechted it on Yom Tov. So they own it before Yom Tov, and then now they're shechting it on Yom Tov. Each one's taking its own portion from it. Harei kol habasar karagli shenehem. Since they're partners and they both owned it equally during Bein Hashemashos, and it's a living object, you can't cut that in half while it's still living. Therefore, you're stuck, and you has to fit both of their Techum. But if you take a barrel, even a liquid, a yain, and it's a chavit, and they both own it during Bein Hashemashos, then they could divide it on Shabbos. Chelko shekol echad mehem kiraglav. They can divide it on Shabbos, and that's okay, because you say lemafreya, right? It's a physical object, it's not a life we're dealing with, you can divide it up. Now here's the case of Shoel, Yud Aleph. Hashoel kli mechaverom erev Yom Tov. You borrow it from erev Yom Tov. So I'll read to the end. Harehu kiragle hashoel. Then it goes by the borrower. Because we already have an established borrower before Bein Hashemashos set in. We know who's borrowing it. He's a shomer, he's a shoel. And therefore it goes by him. Afil lo lekacho ada laila. That's the middle. Even if he only physically took it, and midine mamonos, he's only responsible at nighttime. But since it's miyuchat for him, and he promised to give it to him for the din of eruv Techumin, it goes by, that's considered as you got it before for bein hashmashos.
At the moment, you should have shot. It was already Shaul. It was
Designated to be Shaul. That's correct. As long as it's very designated. By Kinyan, it's a little different. We're more Mekel, but it's halfway out the door. But by Shoel, it has to mamash be designated. But if you just borrowed it, you come over and you ask for it on Yom Tov after Bein Hashmashos. So even though he always comes to a Yom Tov. This guy never takes care of himself ahead of time. He's always asking for favors at the last minute. You're kind of expected, but there's no guarantee. Maybe someone else will ask first and you'll give it to somebody else. Since it's no guarantee, of course, if you specified before verbally or maybe not verbally also, you specified, I'm already basically lending it to him, then it's a different story. Whatever, Shaila. Hareyu kiraglia mashio. So then, it goes, since it wasn't given to him before, then you go by the one who gives it out. Do you want to stop? Alright, we'll stop.